Hi everyone, my name's Emma, and if you're new here, then you don't know, but I am a first-year medical student studying in Australia. I don't sound Australian because I'm from Canada. So that means, how did I get into med school? How did they interview me? I did MMIs, so multiple mini interviews, through Skype. And I thought I'd make a video all about tips and tricks both for a regular MMI as well as special tips for if you have to interview over Skype. So, if you want to learn more about that, then keep watching. Now, to make this video make a little bit more sense, because it is going to be a long one, I'm going to timestamp everything down below, but I've broken this video up into general tips to preparing for an MMI, what to do leading up to, what to do day of, and then special tips and special considerations to make if you're doing an MMI online or through Skype. So everything will be timestamped below so you can jump to the bits that interest you. But I think that's enough for an introduction. Let's just get straight into the information. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I was really nervous for my MMI, and I kept thinking, there's got to be a way to ace this, there's got to be a right way to go through this process. Typical type A personality who is used to studying for the MCAT, studying for university exams, there's rights and there's wrongs. Hate to break it to you, but there isn't as much of a right or a wrong for an MMI. So an MMI, the goal is that they're trying to understand how you think. They try to understand, can you critically think and can you explain your critical thinking well? And that means there isn't really a right or a wrong, which also means there isn't really a right or wrong way to practice. So don't stress out about getting the right answer, the right information, or the right advice. And that's really my tip one, is just find a way that works best for you. Watch a lot of videos, ask to friends for advice and what their experience was like, but just know there is no right way. That being said, I do have some techniques that helped me. My second tip would be to practice thinking. And I know that sounds really broad and that sounds really strange. We all know the structure of an MMI where some of the questions may be scenario-based and you have to respond to someone. Some of them may be reading a passage and giving your opinion on something. So it really could be pretty much anything, and the best way to be able to explain your own thinking is to know how you think as well. So I will include some links below that I used, which were sort of sample MMI questions, but also just reading the newspaper, talking about politics with friends and family that you're not afraid of offending. That kind of thing. Just practice critically thinking about the world around you and about scenarios that you are in, and practice talking about your opinion and why you have those opinions to other people. And that kind of leads into my next tip, which is to read. And I don't mean go read for fun, which you should be doing anyways. Read the newspaper, read news articles, just to stay up to date and see how different arguments are structured. One book that every med student or prospective med student reads is Doing Right. I don't have it with me, but I'll put in a picture. I did read parts of that. It does help you understand medical ethics, and if you haven't taken an ethics course in university, it does help kind of dissect personal ethical choices and helps explain them. I didn't run into any ethics-based questions in my MMIs, or not directly ethics-based, and if you do, your question's not going to be, is this a deontological argument? That's not going to come up. It's not going to come up like that, but it is worth a read to understand where the ethics of medicine kind of fit in, and it's, you know, it's a well-structured book, so it's going to teach you how to structure arguments as well. Another tip for preparing is exactly that. Prepare. Don't memorize. You aren't going to know what kind of question you're getting. So I've linked below, I think it's from UBC, a list of sample MMI questions that I used. They're not going to ask those questions again, and another school is not going to ask the exact same question. They're a good idea to see the variety and type of question you're going to get, but don't spend time memorizing those answers, because it's not 2 + 2 always equals 4. They're not going to ask you 2 + 2. And it's a good idea to go through those questions and practice answering them to other people and ask those people to assess if you argued your point or your opinion well, and ask them to ask you leading questions. So I, at the time, used my boyfriend, my friends over Skype, my coworkers. I had them just ask me questions, like put me in an ethical dilemma and ask me to argue my way out, or Can I practice trying to convince you when you have anxiety about getting on planes to get on a plane in a nice way? That kind of thing. They're all just scenarios and real life kind of problems that you can't really predict exactly. An MMI is not going to ask you medical knowledge. You do not need to know absolutely the ins and outs of everything you studied for the MCAT. It's a good idea to understand the role of a doctor, but that's what med school's for. Med school is to teach you the medical knowledge. They're not going to quiz you on content that you've already learned or they think you should have learned. You've demonstrated that with your GPA and your MCAT, which got you to this interview, so don't worry about that. It's a good idea to familiarize yourself with your application. So knowing the extracurriculars that you really highlighted, I know we all write our own applications, or we should be, but you can kind of forget what were the things you said, what were the keywords you used to describe certain things. Refresh that in your memory. Depending on the school, they may have a station in the MMI that is someone just asking you what was the most impactful experience of your university. They may ask you questions about exactly that, your extracurriculars. They may say, why did you choose to be a member of XY club? And if you can speak to the experience that that club offered you, instead of being like, oh, I forgot I was in that in university, it's just a good idea to familiarize yourself with everything. 2 questions I would prepare an answer for, not necessarily because they will be asked, but they also help recenter yourself in all of this stress, is why do I want to be a doctor and why do I want to go to this school? For me, I prepared those for Macquarie. That's the school that I go to. They didn't ask them, but it really solidified for me how much I wanted it in a good way. And it really solidified for me why I'm going through this process. So it kind of acted as that big why, which anchored me during this sort of stressful time. It's also good to prepare a response to what do you think makes a good doctor? And why do you think you fit those traits? Those are just general questions that may or may not be asked, but they do, if they come up, it's good that you've already thought of them, and they do center you in the kind of person that you're trying to present, as well as why you're standing in this room all nervous and trying to get into medical school. 2 last really easy steps. Pick an outfit that you feel like a rock star in. You want to be confident that day, so don't go buy a new suit that you think you need because it looks professional and you've never worn a suit jacket before. I do say go business casual at the lightest, but buy something that still feels like you. If I have pictures, I'll put them here of some of the outfits I wore. Yes, I still got in business professional for my Skype interviews, and we'll touch on that later, but you still want to feel like you. I would never show up in a black power suit because that's not me. I wore a rose blazer and a navy top with a Peter Pan collar. Still very professional, but still a little quirky and a little fun, which makes me feel like me. And the last tip, if you're going to be commuting to the school to take your MMI, if you have the time and the ability to, try to practice that route. So if you're taking a bus, go on the week before or 2 weeks before that same bus route and sit on the bus, see how long it takes, find not just the building, but potentially the room that you will have to start your day in, and plan to be there early. That's all very typical stuff, but it can really help you day of. You don't want to be stressed out because you don't know where you're going, if that's possible. Okay. You got this far, it is the day of. You're in your rock star outfit, you feel like yourself, and you have found the room with 15-20 minutes to spare. Now what? The first thing I need you to do, take a deep breath. When you get there, before every station, when you're standing outside the door, before you read your prompt, take a deep breath. You're inside, you get asked a question, take a deep breath. Calm, cool, collected. Easier said than done, but that deep breath will act as an anchoring point for you. I did it in the interviews on Skype where I'm a lot closer and they can see my breath a lot more obviously, but it just helps recenter you. It can also be really helpful to remind yourself, and I kind of did this, you got through the hurdle, your OMSAS profile, MCAT, GPA, all of those things were something that they wanted. Take a deep breath and remember that you deserve to be there. This is a tip not quite for day of, but the night before. Take care of yourself. Go to bed at a good time. get up, have a good breakfast, have a good stress-free routine, get ready, and go. Don't spend as much, if you can, don't spend the entire night, the night before, stressing and freaking out and not sleeping. I know you can't really control that, but a good night's rest will do you well. The only other tip I have for the day of is to have fun. I mean, sounds a little silly, but as someone who's on the other side, I actually started to find that they were pretty fun. I like to talk a lot, if you can't tell, and I do like to debate and argue my points. But it was a conversation between me and the examiners. It was problem solving. It was seeing if I could articulate my thoughts. If you get kind of into a groove and you just remember to take deep breaths and remember you deserve to be there, it can get a little fun. And if it starts to get fun, let it. It's so much more enjoyable that way. And also, if you are doing a group interview, so they kind of put you on rotations, you might end up at a break time at the same time as other students, or you'd see other students interviewing beforehand, like you all check in at the same time. Say hi, introduce yourself. It doesn't have to be the competitive environment that prepping and MCAT writing and everything else feels like it can be. You're all there just to put your best self forward. The school wants to know you as a person, and you can let that be shown so much better if you're having fun, you're not being hostile to others, and you're just being yourself. Your professional self, but yourself. So that's all my tips for anyone taking an MMI, or really any kind of interview. It could be a job interview, school for dentistry, do they do interviews, law school, any program. It doesn't have to be med specific, but those are my tips for everyone who is doing any kind of interview. Now, what about those funny international students like myself who have to do it online? If you are taking an online interview for your Skype MMI or anything like that, I still want you to follow all of those previous tips. Don't memorize, but practice. Pick out a rock star outfit. Be prepared, have fun, and be calm, because they all still apply. And then there's just a few other things that you should do, or at least I found helped my experience out when it was specifically online. Instead of having to practice your commute, I want you to practice your location. So get your laptop, the laptop that you're going to use for Skype, and put it on your desk at home and sit in your chair. Is it loud? Is it the right time that your Skype interview is scheduled for? Are people at home making noise? Is the background really distracting and messy and dirty? Some of these things are unavoidable, but if you can, try to see if you can put yourself in a more professional environment that you're still comfortable in. I was lucky. I stayed after hours at work, and I actually used my boss's office because it had some nice plants and better lighting, but you should be at a desk. I did consider borrowing or signing out a room, like a private study room in my local library or my school library. Those are also options. It should be fairly quiet. You can't tune out everything, and it should be professional, and you should be at a desk. Don't sit in your bed to do this. It's a professional interview. With practicing your location comes practicing your tech. So get the laptop that you're going to use, the headphones you're going to use with a microphone, and it can be the microphone in the headphones, and practice. So I had friends from other cities. Obviously, that's not all the way around the world, but from other cities Skype me in the location I was going to be, and we tested out different things of using my laptop's microphone versus the microphone in the headphones. And I got used to using the Skype software for changing up the headphones and the audio and things like that, so that if a problem came, I could troubleshoot with the interviewer on the other side. The lighting just changed a lot. Sorry. But yeah, it's a good idea to practice your tech. If you can hardwire into your internet, so with an Ethernet cord, if you're at a public library, your school, or even at home, do try to do that. It's just an added security that the connection's not going to die. If the connection does die while you're doing an interview, don't worry. Easier said than done. It didn't happen to me, so I can't speak from experience, but all of the schools beforehand gave me an exact procedure to follow should that happen. And I just printed each of those out and had them beside me when I was taking the interview. So I knew if it suddenly cut, I had the exact email I could email from my phone, or the exact contact I would use once the internet came back. And I'm sure they would not penalize you for it. They may just have to cut out a station of your interview, and that's okay. Each station is its own mark, so your average would just be a little bit less influenced or more influenced by each individual station you did, but you're not going to lose marks. For an online interview, I do think it's worth being prepared, like mentally so, for a bit more of a conversational interview. I did multiple Skype interviews for my med school application process. One was very much like an MMI, except instead of me rotating to different rooms, the examiners in front of me got up, left the screen, and a new one came and sat down. I also had an interview that was clearly a group of people sitting around a panel, so they could all hear me, but they rotated the screen so I could hear different ones speaking. So it was like a one-on-one, but there was clearly a panel listening. And I also had an interview that was just a one-on-one interview, and she did have scenarios that she asked me, but sometimes it was just questions, and it just felt like we were kind of chatting. She had timers for some of the questions, but as long as the interview didn't exceed a certain amount of time, she was comfortable if I went a little bit over for some of the answers. So just mentally be prepared. You can always, after you get an email invitation, read through all the information that the school provides. If you have any questions, email them and ask, because they don't want it to be irrepresentative of you. They want the interview to be you in your best form as best as they can see through Skype. So if you are confused about how the proceedings will happen, then that's going to impede your ability to perform, and they don't want that. So just email them if you have any questions. I had a back and forth conversation with various schools, and they were all really pleasant. So day of for a Skype interview, really not that different. I still want you to put on your rockstar outfit, because they're still going to see all of this. And, you know, if you're sitting there in PJ pants, you're going to be internally relaxed, which if that helps, that's good. They do give you breaks to get up and stretch or grab water or something. Obviously, you can't really leave the Skype view, but I could go stand over here if I wanted. But you don't really want to be in like a suit from here up and then PJs from there down. I don't know that it would cause them any hesitance, but it's just not a good idea. And you still want to feel like yourself. Plug everything in early, make sure everything's connected. If you can organize it with a friend, do a quick Skype test just to test out your own connection and things. Put water beside your computer. I had a piece of paper and a pen, and I let them all know that when I was taking it. You obviously cannot you can't write down the questions. You do sign a confidentiality agreement for each interview, but I let them know that I had a plain notepad and a pen, and I showed them just if I wanted to jot things down from their information, and then I would destroy that afterwards. If they say you can't have that, then show them that you've put that away. Turn your phone on silent or put it in another room. Mute the notifications on your laptop and things so you don't get an email sound when you're in the middle of Skype. Most computers will do this automatically if you're in a video software, a video sharing software, but just double check, take a deep breath, and wait for them to call you. So all in all, an online interview isn't that different from an MMI. If you've done them in person, then it's going to be very similar. If you've never done either and you want to look for more resources, reading about MMIs or watching other YouTube videos about MMIs, I'll link some of the ones that I watched. They will help prepare you just as much. I know it seems really scary because it's different, it's through a computer, you don't know what to expect, but it'll be okay. It really wasn't that different than an in-person experience. So that's all sort of my tips, tricks, and a little bit about my experience with my online MMIs. If you have any questions about MMIs, online or in person, comment them below and we can try to help each other out. I'll lend my experience where I can. And if you have any ideas or any questions that I could answer in future videos, let me know. This idea was from a comment. Thank you. So I fully read them all. Obviously, I don't get that many, but I read them all and I really want to know how I can help other people on this pre-med or med school journey. So give this video a like and subscribe if you are interested in more videos. I do both vlogs of my day-to-day life here and more question and answer videos like this. So if you subscribe, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.